All right, I am currently reporting from the South Terminal at Austin Airport in Texas. And today we are going to go over a couple of sessions I played yesterday and the day before at the Lodge Card Club. Stakes will be 25, 50, 100, the occasional 200, so quite the big games. Let's get into some hands. All right, everyone, we are back in Texas for some No Limit Texas Hold'em. Today we're playing 25, 50, 100. Sometimes 200 is on, so quite the big game. Here we go. In the first interesting hand, action gets to me in late position, and I've got pocket jacks. I raise it up to 500 bucks, and then Brad Owen, the man himself, makes it 1,500 on my direct left. He's on the dealer button. Action gets back around to me, and from two players in late position, it seems that pocket jacks are likely going to be the best hand, so I decide to raise it again. I make it 3,500 to go, and Brad makes the call, so we're going to go heads up, out of position, to a very nice flop to start the day. It's Jack 8-5 with two diamonds, so we've got top set on a board that he'll often have some strong hands on, as he does here. Pocket 10's still looking pretty good, so I decide to continue betting 3,500 again. Brad makes the call, and we get an interesting turn card. It's the 2 of diamonds, bringing in a potential flush. But given all the action that happened before the flop, I think it's unlikely he'll have too many suited hands. I think it's more likely he'll have hands like pocket pairs with a diamond, or perhaps a hand like pocket queens that slow plays pre-flop. So with only 14,000 in the pot and him having less than that behind, I decide to go all in. If he has the nut flush, so be it. We still have outs to improve to a full house. We don't get snap called, which looks like good news, but after a few moments of thought, Brad does decide to make the call. Just like that, we are playing an over $40,000 pot against Brad Owen. We turn our cards over, and it looks like we are in good shape, which was to be expected after not getting snap called. Looking to hold on the river. We decide to run it just once, and we do hold. It's a red card, but it's a heart, the queen of hearts, and we're off to a hot start here at the Lodge. In the next one, the 100 is on. Someone makes it 350, Trey calls, and then Andrew Neme calls in the small blind. I'm in the big blind with ace-jack unsuited. Not the best hand in the world, but in this exact situation, I think a re-raise is best. There's some dead money behind, and unless the original raiser has some great cards, we're probably going to be in all right shape. So, with all that considered, I make it 2,500 to go. Everyone folds, but then it gets back to Andrew in the small blind, and he decides to stick around with his pocket fives. So we're going to go to a flop in position this time against another superstar vlogger. Comes okay. It's 10-6 deuce rainbow. Generally a board that's going to favor me more than him. Sure, sometimes he'll have hands like pocket sixes and pocket deuces, but he'll also have a ton of hands that don't connect well or just miss altogether, whereas I can still have hands like over pairs and the occasional ace 10 or king 10 suited. So with all that in mind, I bet small once he checks. Andrew is undeterred. He makes the call. Turn card's not great. It's the 7 of spades. This one is a lot better for him than it is for me, so when he checks, I decide to check it back. Would sometimes be doing this with strong hands as well, so I think it's more than okay. River is bad to worse. It's the 9 of hearts, so now there are many 2-pair combinations that beat me, as well as any 8, of course, now makes a straight. Even worse news is that Andrew bets out for a very annoying size for my exact hand. It's $700, which is less than 10% of the pot. Now we've got a decision to make. He's got 11,000 behind, which is just around the size of the pot. I don't think calling is the best option, despite facing such a small size, because I just don't see any hands that we could beat. However, I do think he would be doing this with hands like 6-5 suited, or perhaps ace-deuce suited, single pair holdings that are block betting on the river in hopes of getting to showdown. And who knows, maybe we could make those hands fold. So I decide to turn my hand into a bluff. If we end up punting to Andrew Neme, it's not the worst thing in the world anyways. So I announce all in. Andrew doesn't think too long before letting go of his pocket fives, and we get this bluff through. Luckily, it works out. This next one is also quite interesting, I think. There's an open to 250, and then Alex makes it 800 bucks. Action now gets to me in the small blind, and I've got red pocket tens. Already kind of a dicey spot with an open and a re-raise ahead of me, but I'm not looking to fold. I didn't fly all the way to Texas to not play pocket tens. At the same time, just cold calling with pocket tens doesn't seem like the best idea, because then we could go three ways to a flop, out of position, or also get squeezed by the player behind, in which case I would be in a really dicey spot. So I decide to re-raise myself. I make it $2,500. The original raiser folds, but when it gets back to Alex, he makes the call in position. Flop comes down pretty interesting for my pocket tens. It's 9, 8, 7, all hearts. So we flop an open-ended straight flush draw, as well as an overpair. Granted, it sounds awesome, but it's actually not that great. We could be up against any set, flopped flushes, bigger overpairs, etc. So, I'm liking the flop, but it's not the best thing I've ever seen. I decide to check it over to him and see what he wants to do, though I think betting is more than okay. And what Alex wants to do is bet $3,000. I've got an overpair, as well as all sorts of possibilities. Did I mention it's also an open-ended straight draw? I think that's worth mentioning. I make the call, and we see an interesting turn card. It's the 5 of hearts. So now the 6 of hearts would be a straight flush, and any bigger heart, of course, beats my 10 high flush. I check it again, and this time Alex thinks for a while before betting once again. This time quite sizable, $8,000. Not a fun spot for me. I've got a 10 high flush, I've got the overpair, but there are also so many hands that beat me, and that's assuming I wasn't behind already on the flop. So think you could go either way here between calling or folding, but the more I think about it, the more I realized I could have a lot of better hands to continue with, including aces, kings, even queens with a heart. After a few minutes, I decide to let this one go, and luckily we avoid some trouble as Alex turned the nut flush with the ace of hearts. A little bit unlucky, but I guess it is a flip pre-flop, so it doesn't seem too unfair. In the following hand, the $200 straddle is on. There's an open to 600. Andrew calls on the button, and I look down at a premium hand in the small blind, pocket queens. Definitely worth raising, I think, so I make it $3,500 to go. And now action is on Brad Owen, who does not fold his cards. You know what that means? There's likely a raise coming, and sure enough, he does raise it up to $8,000. Action gets back around to me, and considering how deep we are and the fact that he's a pretty tight player most of the time, I decide to proceed with just a call, which I think is standard, and we go to a flop heads up. 10-10-8 with 2 clubs. It's not the worst thing ever. We've got the overpair, as well as the potential backdoor flush draw, whatever that's worth. I check it, and much to my surprise, Brad checks it back. Turn card is decent. It's the 10 of diamonds, which technically gives me a full house. Still, I'm not sure if there's a lot of value in betting. I think it's okay to do that since sometimes I would be bluffing with some hands, but checking my exact hand seems okay as well. So that's what I do. And Brad this time does decide to put in a bet of $4,000. That's less than a quarter of the size of the pot. And against such a small size, I think it's more than okay to have some check raise hands. And pocket queens definitely fits the bill. But I also think calling has some merit, so even though I would be raising at least some of the time, this time I decided to play it cool and just call, and of course keep his potential bluffs intact. River card, not my favorite thing. It's the ace of hearts, so now a lot of hands that we were potentially beating improve to top full house, if you can call it that. I check it a third time, expecting to face quite a big bet from Brad, but interestingly enough, he bets $4,000, which is very, very tiny compared to the size of the pot. And I think against that size, I'm going to call with pocket queens. Of course, I could have some better hands, but he might even be value betting a worse hand like pocket jacks. Unlikely, but again, I don't have to be right very often to make this call okay. So I toss in the 4,000. Worst case, we're giving this guy $4,000, and considering that it's Brad Owen, I don't feel too bad about it. Sure enough, that's what's going to be happening this time as Brad has improved with his ace queen. A little bit of run bad for us, and we lose this $33,000 pot. In the following hand, the 200 is on once again. There's an open to 600 from Alex in late position, and then Andrew makes it $2,500 from the small blind. Next, it's on me with King Jack suited in the big blind. And I think in this exact situation, Andrew is going to be re-raising wide enough where King Jack suited is a good hand to raise again with. Maybe not every single time, but like I said, Andrew is more than capable of having a fair amount of hands. Of course, this time I am in some trouble as he's got ace king, but of course I don't know that in the moment, so I put in $6,000. Everyone folds, but it gets back to Andrew. He's got ace king. He's probably not going to fold. Instead, he decides whether he wants to call or raise again, and what he wants to do is just call, which is more than okay with me, so we are off to a flop in position, which comes down not too bad for the King Jack suited. It's Jack 9-7 with one club. Again, not too shabby. I've got myself top pair, pretty good kicker. Andrew checks, and I decide to bet small, $4,000. He's got ace-king offsuit with no backdoor flush draw of any kind, but the man is undeterred. He's got high hopes for the future, so he makes the call. And we don't get the best turn card. It's the 8 of spades. So now a hand like pocket 10s, which we were beating on the flop, of course, improves. Also hands like 9-8 suited or 8-7 suited pull ahead. So when he checks this time, I don't think it's a great card for me. I check it back. And once again, we go from bad to worse as the river comes the ace of clubs. So now any sort of ace high hand like ace queen or ace 9 suited improves. Of course, ace 9 suited was already a pair, but you guys get the idea. We are not in great shape now with the King Jack, given all the pre-flop action. So when he checks again, I just check it back right away. And it turns out we got unlucky once more against the rivered ace. Andrew's going to win this pot, just over $20,000 going his way. And we are not running great, but I think it's fair since pre-flop ace king is better than King Jack. So, seems just in the end. And with that, we move to the second day here at the lodge. First day didn't go too great. Let's see if we can turn it around on this day. Starting off with ace queen. There's an open to $250, then a re-raise on his left. I am in the straddle, and I am looking to raise it once again. Unless my man, the kid, in the cutoff has a great hand, I'm happy to play this one even if it's out of position. So I make it $2,000. Of course, given all this action, I think it's okay to let go of ace-queen unsuited. But like I said, I didn't fly from Texas to play super tight. So I put in the raise. Initial raiser folds, but the re-raiser calls. So we are going to go heads up out of position to a very good board for me. It's queen 9-7 with 2 diamonds. So we've got top pair, top kicker, as well as a potential flush draw with the queen of diamonds, but don't really care too much about that. I decide to bet small, and my opponent makes the call. Turn card is the 7 of spades. Generally a card that's going to be a bit better for him, so I think you can go either way between betting small or checking. This time I decide to check it, considering he doesn't have too much behind. He checks it back, which I think is kind of interesting. I expected him to bet whether he's got a single pair holding or some sort of hand that floats the flop in hopes of bluffing later on. But what do I know? He checks it back, and we see a blank on the river, the deuce of hearts. Now it's a question between checking again or betting. And honestly, I think checking makes a little bit more sense. There's probably a little more value in letting him bet, whether it's with a bluff or a value bet with a hand worse than mine. But in the moment, I decided to go all in for his pot-sized bet remaining in hopes that he's got some sort of middling pair that'll hero call. We are also playing the stand-up game, so perhaps I might be a little more prone to bluffing, or at least my opponent might think that. Turns out he is not interested and lets go of his ace-king. All things considered, we ran pretty hot this hand. Always nice when you have ace-queen versus ace-king and outflop your opponent. This next one is a little more complicated, I think. I get pocket queens in early position. I make it 500 to go and get no less than 5 callers. So that's right, we're going to go 6 ways with pocket queens. Not the best feeling, and especially so when the flop comes down 6-5 deuce with 2 clubs. Pretty much going to be in bad shape almost always when you consider that there's 5 other guys in this pot. So when it checks to me, I decide to check it. Alex does not check. Instead, he bets $1,200. The kid makes the call, and then when it gets back to me, we have a decision between just calling or going for the old check raise with an overpair, OMC style. Now, I think there's merit to both, but given what I picked up on the flop in terms of bet sizing and all that live stuff, I think a check raise is going to serve me best here, especially once we get a call from the kid. He most likely doesn't have my hand beat, but instead some sort of hand we can get some value from, like a draw or a weaker pair. Just mostly worried about Alex having something better than me, but I think I'm okay with it if he does, since he only has around 20,000 behind. So I check raise it up to $6,000. Action is now back to Alex, who doesn't seem too thrilled about the situation. Of course, that's a relief to me, but it could also be some Hollywood from my guy here. I've never seen him play before, so perhaps I am getting swindled by some Leonardo DiCaprio grade acting. In the end, he decides to go all in for his $23,000. The kid folds. I, of course, make the call right away. If he's got me beat, so be it. We decide to run it twice, and my man has got himself ace-6 suited. So top pair, top kicker. We're in pretty good shape against that hand. Unfortunately for me, we're going to chop it up as he turns an ace on the first run. So lucky to run it twice this time, and we do end up winning around $1,600 at least. I'll take it. In the next one, there's a raise from the button to 650, and then J-Win in the small blind makes it 2,500. I am in the big blind, and I look down at pocket kings. Finally, an ideal situation. I raise it up to $6,000. The button folds. Now it's back on J-Win. He's got himself ace-king. This is what you call a classic cooler, ace-king versus pocket kings. He's thinking about what to do, and it's kind of awkward given his stack size, so I understand the longer period of time to make a decision. In the end, he announces all in, which I'm not sure I'm the biggest fan of, but I guess I kind of understand it. It would suck to call and then have to fold on the flop. Anyway, I, of course, make the call right away. I am not folding pocket kings pre-flop like some people like to do. We are off to a run out. We decide to run it twice. And once again, get unlucky on the first board as the river comes an ace. That is the third time on this trip that an ace on the river has broken my heart, but that's how it goes sometimes with poker. At least we end up holding on the second board so we don't lose, which was certainly a possibility. And we do end up winning $500. No, I'm sorry, $450. Hey, that's still a good chunk of change. I'll take it. Life goes on. In this next one, you are going to see me play my hand in a questionable way. What else is new? The $1,600 straddle was on in this one. Or I'm sorry, the $800 was on. I don't know. Some ridiculous straddle was on. It was either $800 or $1,600. All you need to know is action starts on Andrew Neme in the small blind. He opens it up to $2,800. Flintstone calls in one of the straddles, and then I've got ace-4 suited in also one of the straddles. This game was a little off the rails at this point. I think that's worth noting. Of course, ace-4 suited, not the best hand ever, but I do think it's a good bluffing candidate pre-flop. It's a suited ace, has some removals to strong stuff. Both of my opponents don't have a whole lot behind. I guess Neme has a little bit more than I accounted for. I thought he had like 20K, but graphics says he has 31,000. I decided to rip it all in there. If we can get a fold from both of these guys, that'll be a hell of a win. If either one of them calls, we shouldn't be in the worst shape ever. Of course, as it turns out, my reads are way off because Andrew has a great hand. He's got ace-king. He's probably not going to fold that one, and sure enough, he makes the call. Flintstone gets out of the way with his Jack-10 suited, so we are off to the races against Andrew Neme in a $70,000 pot. We decide to run it twice yet again. First board looks good for me. I flopped a nut flush draw, 2 hearts out there, but unfortunately can't find any help on turn or river. Second board comes all low cards, but not a 4, so things are looking pretty dicey for me. Probably going to give Andrew a double up until the 4 of spades appears on the turn out of nowhere. A total miracle card, looking to avoid a king on the river, and luckily we do. It's the 6 of hearts. Just like that, we are going to chop this one up and each profit $2,000. So despite all the previous runouts being a bit unfortunate for me, this one definitely helps out. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we move to the last interesting hand of the night. In this one, the $400 straddle is on. T-Fund opens it up to $900. Gets to me in the small blind, and I've got king-queen offsuit. Could probably go either way here between folding, calling, and raising. I feel like it's worth saying that since I am in Doug Polk's very own card room. But this time I decide to re-raise it. I make it $4,500. Action gets back to T-Fund, and he calls with pocket tens. Heads up out of position to a very good flop for king-queen. It's king-queen-9 with 2 clubs. Of course, we're losing to sets and a flop straight, but aside from that, we're going to be in great shape. So I decide to continue betting $3,000. I expect him to call or fold, but instead he raises, which I found rather peculiar on a board like this, which is often going to favor me more. So now we have a question between re-raising again or just calling. I think there's merit to both. We keep his bluffs open if we just call. But at the same time, since I don't think he should be raising often, I tend to think he's got a strong hand, like a combo draw of some sort, or perhaps a lesser 2 pair. So I decide, let's just get the money in now. Perhaps not the best idea, though, because when I do that, he instantly folds his pocket tens. and we don't get the most value out of this hand. I gotta admit, I'm not super in love with the way I played this one. Looking back, of course, it's easier when you see the cards, but yeah, could have just called and maybe things would have gone a little bit differently. And that was the last interesting hand of this stream. Of course, tonight went a little bit better for me than the previous night, but stay tuned for final results. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the hands.
So, as you guys saw, that didn't go particularly well for me. In fact, I think I ran kind of bad because there was a few hands across both days where I got all in pretty good shape and ended up not winning. So that wasn't ideal, but at the same time, there was that hand where I had ace-4 against Andrew Neme's ace-king and chopped that one up. So guess I can't really complain. And also considering how the year has gone for me so far, well, to say I've gotten lucky is probably an understatement. All in all, I would give this trip a thumbs up, despite losing around $3,000 between both days. You guys will see the exact results right here as always. I got a flight to catch back to California, and I think I'm going to Vegas in a week or two, so I'm thinking of doing an old school vlog where I put the phone down on the table and film like a 5:10 or a 10:20 session. We'll see. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for the support. Thank you to everyone at the lodge for having me and the hospitality. And until next time, guys, good luck at your local tables. Peace.